Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1232nd New Social Environment. I'm Chloe Stagaman, Director of Programs here at the Rail, and I have the extreme pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Mary Weatherford and Jane Hahn. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Mary Weatherford is recognized as one of the leading painters of her generation, taking on the legacies of American abstraction. As she expands the medium's possibilities, she honors its history by seizing opportunities to break with tradition. Her notable incorporation of sculptural elements, including the neon tubes that have been a presence in her work since 2012, as well as her embodied approach to painterly gesture, have allowed her to employ abstraction as both a formal language and a poetic, highly personal mode of engagement with the world. And our host today, Jane Hahn, is a writer, filmmaker, and photographer. Educated at the Ruskin School of Drawing and Fine Art, Jane specialized in the study of expressionist and neo-expressionist art. Her writing includes interviews with the curators of the Tate Modern, the Musée Rodin, and essays for exhibitions including Julian Schnabel's recent show at the Guy Pieters Gallery. Jane's background includes degrees at Princeton, Cambridge, and Oxford, where she majored in literature, cultural theory, and fine art. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jane to get us started with loads of gratitude for Jane and for Mary.
Thanks, Chloe. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you for inviting us. I'm just going to get this. Oh, I've got a button that is obscuring. There we go. I think you can see the screen now. Okay. So yeah, thanks, Chloe. And thank you to everyone at the Brooklyn Rail for inviting us to hold this discussion. I think it's a really special occasion to present Mary and her new work to you, especially because I think the last show was almost an entire year ago, if I'm not mistaken, in New York. Is that right, Mary? Am I getting this?
More than a year. It was January. January.
Yeah, at the Gagosian. So I also want to thank Mary and her team for inviting me to visit the studio. I've actually been visiting for the past 2 months on a regular cadence every week, and it's been really illuminating and energizing, really, to be in this space, to see the paintings up close and to see how this series came together. So the show, as Chloe mentioned, is called The Surrealist. It opened last week on the 16th at the David Kordansky Gallery here in LA, and it runs until June 28th. So if you're here in LA, please go take a look. If you are not in LA, then we have the privilege of taking you through the show today. Mary and I talked about a lot of different ways to approach this talk.
Jane, I'd love to see the show. Go to the next slide.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we decided
to start with the vision of the show. Do you mind? Just the next, there you go. Okay.
So we decided the best way really was to take you through the galleries. And this is the main gallery, the first one you walk into. And I think to start our first question, I think the first thing that viewers are almost confronted with is the range in size, scale, the orientation. I know this isn't the first time you've made paintings this large, Mary. Though perhaps the vertical one is maybe the largest vertical painting you've made. But in general, as a start, maybe you could talk about the range of canvas sizes that is happening in this room and what led to these choices.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you, Brooklyn Rail. I rarely do this because of the number of people that I think tune into these things, and then it's recorded for forever. So I don't know how many people are here. I can't see that number.
Looks like it's about 70.
That's pretty amazing. So, um, thank you for the introduction. And I think I wanted you to flip forward because I wanted to look at the show already.
Yeah, sure.
And this is the first gallery that you would encounter. And although we'll have another slide, there is a painting on this wall, say, where I am, that has a small piece of coral attached. So you would walk in and then see this painting from the side. Yes, this is the painting that you see. So you can go back to the last slide. So you'll see this one is on this wall. So pursuant to your question about the sizes.
Yeah.
The large work to the right is untitled because the image is something that I did not want to pin down for the viewer. And I have never left a work untitled. Ever. I'm trying to think if there was anything untitled. My works have been titled in every show since 1989.
I can't think of one.
So this is the first untitled work. And Jane, we could probably rest for the entire hour on the use of untitled, because right. Untitled there is a word there. If a work is yet to be titled, the gallery has it as yet to be titled. And after a lot of thought, I left this untitled because it's too important and vast an image to, I think, inform the viewer of a meaning. So this work is about 11 feet high and 24 feet wide. It is flash on linen. You see, when I told you let's not get stuck on the second slide, like I'll get stuck on this slide, but that's okay. And we can, I'm like looking at the questions. So Jane has wonderfully written out the questions. And of course I have like self-consciousness that I want to be interesting. And
I think it's
we'll see if this works.
I think this question of flash is really
well, I want to stick with the different sizes.
Okay.
So this is 11 by about 24 feet. It is one continuous piece of heavy gauge linen. And the reason I'm able to make it 11 feet high, that's the biggest height, width, that's the width of the linen. This was a dream of mine to make a painting that was that big. And honestly, it's interesting that you've written about Julian Schnabel because I am a admirer of his work, and he just sews the pieces together. So there are seams. And there are other ways of doing it if you paint on cotton duck. But in order to make this painting, it took several years. I commissioned a loom. I built a loom that's wide enough to weave this linen. And my loom that I own sits in Belgium in a mill, and I pay rent on the area that it sits in the warehouse. And when I need linen, we call the mill and ask them to weave it.
So I've pulled up a close-up of the linen here. What is particularly special about the tactility or the teeth? What about this linen was important enough that you wanted to make it bespoke?
Well, okay, so we're about to go off topic, which is a famous thing that I do.
Any tangents?
Or I don't know, famous, but I tend to follow topics down side roads. So I am willing to come back to the shifts in scale, and I want to address that I wanted the entire exhibition to have the formal look of a musical composition by Dane Rudier, who is a modernist composer who was friends with Agnes Pelton. And he was the first person to write a book about astrology in English. I don't know if there were any in other languages, but if you go on Amazon, there are many books on astrology by Dane Rudier, but he was also a composer. And his compositions sound like this: bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, bong. That sort of classic pre-John Cage modernist piano compositions. And he and Agnes Pelton, who was what you would call an American transcendentalist painter, who has come into the public eye only in the last 15 years. She was friends with Dane Rudier, and at her opening in Manhattan, and I can't tell you what year this is, she had Dane Rudier playing the piano. So the ideal situation for an opening would be bing bong, so that the sound was echoing the composition of the room. So David Kordansky and I knew a year ago that we wanted this varied installation, that the various sizes and attributes to each painting would create a composition as I described. So this painting is 11 by about 24. Mm-hmm. And then the painting on the back wall is like a 6-foot tall painting. It's called Bonfire. So that has a name. And again, it's painted on the linen, which we can get to. And attached to the painting is a piece of neon. And the neon is not as shipped from the supplier. It's not a straight neon tube, though you might think so, but in your heart knows that it is not straight. If it was straight out of the box, sorry, I'm turning a noise off. If it was straight out of the box, you would sense it. And the painting would be a contrast between the fluid dynamics and gesture of the painting with a machine-made object. Now, this is not what's happening. The glass is slightly bent. And I create a pattern on a piece of butcher paper out of masking tape. And I have my glass benders. I did have the idea at one point that I would blow my own glass, but found out that maybe I could bend a piece of glass that's about 2 feet long. So the people I use have been doing it since they were children.
I'm guessing this is also the process that's happening here in After William Blake, the bending of the neon. And so that's a conscious decision. That's not a random tube coming like that and you deciding to choose it like a found object. It's you really consciously bending it in the shape that you.
Well, it's a combination, Jane. In a way it is found because I make a supply of pieces of neon in slightly bent shapes. And then I have a collection of them. You've seen them in the studio. Mm-hmm. So I have, I don't know what you would call them, kind of layered tables on wheels. And I have them in red, yellow, green, every color, and then various gases. Well, only 2 gases in this case. So I use argon and neon. And the argon is blue, the neon is red. Generally, neon is used to fill a red glass tube only. It can be used. Everything else is pumped argon in the world. If you see a neon light and you look at the end of the tube, it will glow blue. So the next time you're in In-N-Out Burger, you just walk up and you'll see the end is blue. And that's the color of argon gas, and argon is in the periodic table. So this is pumped argon. It's a clear green glass.
Right. I mean, there are so many aspects to the neon we can talk about. I know you, in a sense, you've talked about it to death in previous talks and articles. But I do think what I did not really notice until this show that the use of neon is not in this, you don't use it in one way, that it serves different purposes and it does different things visually, semiotically, let's say. It does different things to the space. So I know you've talked about neon, you wanting to interrupt or even make invisible some part of the painting surface. And that certainly happens in, we'll see a few of those later. I don't want to skip around too much. But in this particular painting, I don't know why I want to say the neon is functioning in a different way. I think part of it is the verticality. So instead of interruption, I see an opening. I don't know if it's because I'm seeing heavens and I'm seeing an opening of light. It's also called after William Blake. So I do think of pictures of the cosmos, romantic poetry. It reminds me of, because of the verticality, it reminds me of Barnett Newman's Zip, which I'm sure that rhymes in your mind in some sense as you're placing these neons. Can you talk about, in this particular painting, are you using neon in a different way, or did you have a different intention?
No, I think that what happens is that the color of the tube itself, okay, intention. Okay. So maybe in 2012 I had an intention of interrupting the surface, but as I've worked with neon in the paintings for, what is that, 14, 15 years, I believe I began with an intention which turned into observation. So over the years, I've become what's that word? Familiar with the different colors of glass and what they do. So that white that's on the bonfire painting, the white neon is the most, has the most choices. So it goes from a warm, very warm white, like sunrise, to say you can have 2300, 3200, 4500, 5500, 6500 is pretty cold. And then the coldest is 8500. And 8500 almost makes your teeth hurt. It's so cold. So there's a big difference, huge emotional effect gap between 2300 and 6500. I mean, I rarely would use an 8500. It's just too white, too blue, but if I want to disturb the eye, I would use a very cold. In this case, it's sort of somewhere in between. I can't even remember what this is, because the painting itself will shift the feeling of the neon. So I believe I had a warmer light on this, and the whole thing came together in a very nicely. It all matched. It was very relaxed. And I thought it was too much of a totality, that there wasn't a break. So I found, and I will say found, I have piles of this stuff at different lengths and different bends and various different diameters. A skinny light is brighter than a fat light, because the electricity is being pushed through. Like, think about a skinny hose. Electricity is being pushed through a smaller container, and so it's working harder and shining brighter. And the bigger the diameter, the softer the light. So I can put a light on something that's a small diameter and say, ooh, too bright, let me bring it back. So I pick a larger diameter, and that'll dim it for me.
So here it sounds like you wanted it to be colder in order to serve as the cut, in order to...
It's a cut, but also it's, very simply.
And yet you have the reflective background. So
there's a metaphor of, there's always a coming together of nature and culture. There was a time in my work where I thought there's too much nature and not enough culture. And my painterly solution to that was to paint brick walls. And this is a long time ago. Brick wall with a sky. And because I thought that the brick was the basis of architecture, which was the sign of somebody's there, right? And when I found the light, I thought, this is the way to indicate that someone's there. And I began collecting images of different cities from space and even countries. I mean, Russia is the most interesting one at night because there are little lights around the edge and the entire center is black. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the Earth from space at night, you can see where there are cities and even a population where there's nothing, perhaps farmland. So where the light is reveals exactly where there is society and cooperation and
the urban
electricity company.
The urban, right?
The urban.
On this topic of, well, I think neon is a type of interruption. If we go back to this untitled painting, I think at some point recently you discovered that you didn't need neon for the interruption.
Right. So we're doing the classic. I just looked at my watch for halfway through.
Is it already half an hour? All right. Okay.
Yeah. So would you go to just the plain install entry? And we'll kind of do a walkthrough tour of this room. Okay. No. The beginning. Previous. I just want to recap to give a walkthrough of the show. So as you enter, you would see this, and then next slide, please. 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 Jane, you could just anticipate. Okay, so we're staying in this. Okay, so why don't we, I know you can kind of skip back and forth. Can we,
you want to jump to
the fourth wall of this show, and then let's do the walkthrough of the lower gallery so we see all the works in the show, and then we'll come back to process and ideas just so we see the show. Just let's have a tour of the show.
So the fourth wall meaning
the rose tree, a rose tree.
Right here.
Okay, so this is the fourth wall of the big gallery that you enter to see the show. And this painting has a small piece of coral in the very center. And I picked it out of a box of pieces of coral, and I thought it was great because it echoed that shape on the right, and it looked like Linda Benglis. And okay, so those are all the paintings except the blue one. Let's take a little closer look at the blue one in that room. This is called Neptune, and this is the painting. And I love the lower right corner, and we can come back to that. And can we take a walk down the stairs to the gallery on the plaza called the West Gallery? So you leave that room and you walk down to an open air plaza, and you come to a building that's designed by the architecture firm Y. In fact, the entire campus is designed by Y. And the architect's name is Coolapot. He now has commission for a big project at the Louvre. He worked on the Met, but he did design Kordansky's gallery. So the lower plaza is, there are 3 paintings in this room. And you see one is quite large, again, 11 by 24 feet. And it has a title, and it's called Genesis. And let's just do a walkthrough and then we'll go back and linger.
So this is the painting on the opposite wall. And the show takes its title from this piece. So I do think we should linger on this at some point.
Yeah, I'd like to just see the show and come back. I think that's a nice idea. So this is that's not as large as the largest one, but curiously, the Surrealist, it has the same measurements as After William Blake. So this one is After William Blake turned on its side. And that's confusing to me because the William Blake painting looks really tall, very tall. And this doesn't look as wide as After William Blake is tall. So this has a giant starfish glued on it and a small piece of neon.
It's curious what orientation does to the effect in the reading of the painting. I mean, in some senses, that landscape format reminds us of historical painting. It reminds us of narrative because we're naturally reading left to right. Whereas the vertical one felt much more like a tone poem or just simply a doorway, a portal, but it doesn't have the same effect. Are those things running through your mind? I mean, what prompts this selection of orientation? And
sometimes it's whether or not, okay, the great confession, and this is staying in the realm of the found object, is that sometimes my intention, and this is why I'm not sure intention is, I suppose it's important as a tee off. Like a golfer's intention is to get a hole in one.
Right.
But then perhaps the entertaining part is, how does the golfer get out of the sand trap after they have attempted a hole in one, right? So that's the entertainment. Like if you, okay, I'm not a golf fan, Now, I do like tennis. So an ace is the goal on the first serve.
Right.
If I went to a tennis match that was won by aces and nothing was returned, that would be boring.
Right.
So my intention when I made After William Blake was to make a horizontal painting.
So it's funny.
And there were forces beyond my control, which is a very funny thing to say, but the fluid dynamics were working in such a way that I did not understand the wicking properties of the ungessoed edge. Okay, I paint horizontally and I walk on them, and we'll get to a setup. Yeah, here we go. So this is my studio where I paint, and I have a wooden platform that's been developed over the years. Many years ago, I've always painted on horizontally. Even in 1989, my show at Diane Brown of Targets, I painted those horizontally because why? Because I made one target painting vertically because I made it in small. And I think when I made them bigger, I had to thicken the paint to paint. But when they were smaller, it was as big as I could reach in. And that continued, that I could make a painting as big as my reach. And that was fine when I was young, but as I aged, it made my back hurt. And that happens to people. And then people have various solutions of how to do it. Like Rebecca Morris has she has a aluminum catwalk that can slide back and forth over the painting. I mean, de Kooning famously had a slot in the floor of his studio, so he would lower the painting into the basement so he could paint on the top of it. You know, they were painted vertically, but they would go up and down in this slot in the floor.
Wow.
And then he also had what are those called? Easel that would rotate. So those paintings that are either this way or that way are either this way or that way rectangles, because he would twirl them as he was painting, not like a spin painting, but to shift the orientation. So
going back to your process.
Going back to after William Blake, I meant for it to be a horizontal. And honestly, the paint is like, I use incredibly watered down paint. These paintings are made in one session. So it's like, I see it as a session of, what's that called? Improv. It's improv. So there's an intention, and the intention would be as simple as, I'll make a red painting. And I know to get to the end, I start with green, and not to reveal too much about that, but for any painters on the call, start with green, go towards red.
Everything you're talking about really fits classically into how people would talk about action painting. And I think it's interesting that that was a question I had actually. It was like, do you start the painting with everything sort of sketchily conceived in your mind?
I never make a sketch, and I never make a watercolor or nothing. No, nothing.
It's a series of actions and reactions, and I love that.
Yes. It's a response to what the paint is doing. So the problem with the William Blake painting, if you look at it, is that the paint, because of the thin narrowness of it, the paint got a mind of its own and started to run off the side there. You see, there's almost like a funnel going in the center. It goes off to the right, that purple funnel. Right, so the paint just started following itself, and the only way to stop it, and it was a wide funnel, and so I started trying to stop it by creating puddles of paint that had a lower viscosity. I guess that would mean thicker. High viscosity, which way does that go? High viscosity is thin and low viscosity is thick. So, okay, I think. Correct me later after. So I started pouring thicker paint in to say the white is thicker than the dark. So the painting is I start with the opposite color of where I want to end up in very thin paint. And then that thin paint, then not to give it all away, I pour thicker paint into it. So, but I also use sponges as well. So because I'm interested in demonstration of will. It's not a science experiment, which is a valid way of making a work. It is not a science experiment. It is a painting by a person, that would be me. And so the will is there with the sponge marks that are sometimes additive and sometimes attractive. So this picture really got away from me, but there were parts of it that I just was fascinated with while I was painting. And I think because it got so far down the road without me, I kind of gave up and treated it in a different way than the other paintings, which in the end proved to be a very good thing. And
the thing you're saying,
vertical orientation of it was far better than the horizontal.
Right, I see. So in the end, it was finished. It was a finished painting, and it was at that point that you decided this is better as a vertical.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Finished means it's 3 a.m. and I have to go home. And I've done the best I can. And I was very mad at this painting because I thought that my platform was not level. I have little feet and I can take Allen wrenches. And I got to tell you, I swear to God, I was cranking that thing up and it wouldn't do anything. It was like it was running uphill. And it reminds me, in fact, because there's purple, like in Get Smart, one of the codes was to 99 was the purple water runs uphill. Yes, that was going to be their code in that wonderful Cold War comedy. The purple water runs uphill. That ended up as a horizontal, but again, I do traffic in the found object, even in the paintings, because I turned it vertically and then suddenly it was a William Blake. And so I am completely fine with finding other artists' work in my work.
Right. And I think this thing you're saying about control and letting go of control or having no control at certain moments, it speaks to the fact that sometimes accidents happen some that are bad, some that you would call painting miracles.
Yes. Like the red painting is a painting miracle. Like
the cadmium one
does not come along but in a lifetime.
Which aspects of the whole painting, or are there certain aspects of this
the whole thing.
Right.
The giant conch shell in the lower left that looks like a black hole.
Yes.
So there's a scale shift that is really compelling, really interesting to me, that the form looks like a conch shell, which is then, been painted over and over and over and over again. I mean, probably for all time. I'm sure that somebody's written a thesis on the history of the conch shell in art. But it also looks like okay, there are really no images of a black hole. There are images of the effect of the black hole. So
you mean the light radiating around I forget what it's called.
I think it's swallowing stars, right? So the
It's
evidence is the missing star. Isn't that how it goes? Like
yeah,
there's something out there that's sucking in worlds.
yeah, and it's
And,
radiating the
and the
light,
question is, what would happen if you passed through a black hole?
right?
Like, would you come out the other side into another time?
As far as I know, they're still debating what is at the singularity of a black hole, but I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of black holes.
Thanks, Jane.
Then we'll, then we'll go
Okay,
into
so back to the lower galleries. We'll just walk through the show down there.
okay. I do want to come back to this process picture because there were so many things that were surprising. And I also think there are shifts happening here that are interesting. Yeah, we'll come back to this. So let's just cover.
Do a little bit of a walkthrough, like you're at the show.
So this is the third of the last galleries. This is the view of the room. And if we want to look at Icarus.
So this picture is the same size as the red painting upstairs. And the red painting upstairs has this little piece of coral. And again, I just have a box of scraps and I take them out and say, hey, this looks like a Rodin. This looks like a Greek torso. So this picture is called Icarus, and there is a small piece of coral in the center, and this poor person has lost their head, their arms, and their legs, and there's nothing left but a torso, and it's falling. So not only have the wings melted off, but everything else as well. So
maybe this is a good time to talk about, I think perhaps people don't know that you have been working with assemblage. You've been working with coral, shells, starfish for a long time, actually, since I think the 1990s. It's not a new element that you're suddenly introducing.
yeah.
In fact, I would say that there is a strain of even surrealism through a lot of your works, especially the last show in the Gagosian, Sea and Space. If I think of the Emersonian, you have these gorgeous swaths of almost velvet green, but then there's that white eye gleaming
eyeball in the center. Yes. Yes.
center.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And so I don't think surrealism is this sudden, non sequitur happening in this show. I think probably before Sea and Space, you're interested in these moments of the uncanny. You're interested in these moments that disrupt. We have an initial moment when we look at the sort of the more formless aspects of the canvas. We get lost in the awe and grandeur of it, but then it gets disrupted, whether that's neon, whether that's a screen print, or whether it's one of these pieces of coral. I think it's important for you to add that element of the uncanny.
This is why I asked you to have the discussion with me, Jane. This is great. Yeah.
But it's also nothing new in the arena of abstract expressionism. You are finding new expressions of it, but you're following, in a sense, a tradition. This is not. The other day, you called this a huge risk, and I agree, it's a risk. But at the same time, it falls very much in line with the tradition of the abstract sublime, which follows from Romance.
Yes. And the risk part is it's almost more evident in these coral pieces, the defacement of the painting. There's that part. I drill a hole in the painting, and so there's a perfectly fine abstract painting that does do what a painting should do.
Which is the ground.
I never want it to be, the hard part is, and if an attachment turns a painting into a ground, I don't want it. I'm not interested in that. Okay, so my brother had a little painting. It was quite clever. It was a painting of a wave, and whoever painted it, I don't know, my parents probably bought it at a fair, had painted it on very rough pressed wood. It wasn't particle board, but it was the kind that's like the most cheap construction wood. So it was kind of crackles. And so there was a wave painted in there. And because it was painted on the rough wood, it had the effect of a frothiness to it. And one day I went in my brother's room, and this was not announced. He never said anything about it, but he had taped a small surfer cut out from a magazine that was the perfect size into the wave. And I didn't see it at first, but I fell over laughing, and then I had 3 brothers and a sister. So, and he hadn't told anyone about this. And so we just loved it so much, but also he had taped a surfer on mom's painting. It wasn't his. So there was a not well-behaved element to it. So it's like that. But the shift in scale was so funny. We couldn't stop laughing about this.
Right. I love this because you talk about how you sort of delight in the defacement of paintings, and the neon is part of that. The white paint is part of that.
Well, that's like the relationship to Fontana. That the Fontana, there's a cut, but then in the neon paintings, the light is a cut in your vision that you can't, the light's coming at your eye, not bouncing from the painting.
Right.
But then this is might be even worse in terms of interruption.
Right. So, Mary, I'm conscious of time because I think we only have 4 minutes left.
I think we did a good job, but why don't you just tour the other 3 paintings in this gallery, and then we did it.
Yes. I also, while I'm flicking through these slides, this is Island of the Dead. I'm sad we didn't get to talk more about this because I love the Bauckham reference.
So I'll just say, if we have the 4 minutes, this is called Island of the Dead. And I made this picture and stretched it, and then I saw an island reflected in the water. And to me, again, there's a kind of sense of humor of an adolescent or like, where is that fascination with the abstract sublime coming from? Like the Island of the Dead by Bauckham is a very popular painting in the Met. So everybody loves it. Everybody wants to see it. So there's my Island of the Dead. So next.
Here's a small detail. Oops, it's not flicking. 1 second. There's a small detail. And then we can go to agate. I think that's how you pronounce it.
This is agate. Agate. It's just the name of a rock. And this has a yellow neon pumped argon. It was made in the same session as Island of the Dead. So if they're smaller works, I will put them down on the wood at the same time. So You'll see the similar colors across several works. And the reason I do that is to not is to distract myself. So my thinking brain turns off and the subconscious takes over. I give myself too much to do.
So that you don't think too much.
Exactly.
So that things become more automatic.
Yep. Yeah. Like automatic writing. Yeah. And then this is called Before the Storm. And I just love this color light. And it's nearly impossible to find a painting for this light because the light is so soft and gentle. Most paintings will clobber it.
I want to.
So I think that's it. We did the whole show. And
Yeah.
do you want to go back to the for 1 minute on the wet painting?
Yes, I do. I do because I didn't really realize until yesterday, staring at this picture, that in your early works, let's say the ones with the neons, the Los Angeles show, the Manhattan show, um, there's a lot of classic gestural things happening, right? So
Yeah.
brush, sponge, color,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
see the presence, you can see the presence of the artist's hand.
Yeah.
Full series of paintings. I mean, I wasn't the only one. There were people at the show who were also remarking to me, am I wrong, or are these a little bit more? And we were searching for the words like organic or, and I came up last night with the word physics. You were sort of more content to let the physics of things take over. And I realized looking at this picture that the technique is totally different here. You are putting paint down first, dumping a whole bunch of water on it, and then painting through, or not even painting, just pushing through the water so that
Maybe.
I
I'm not going to tell you exactly how I do it, but
mean, this is so if I look at the swooping effects here, when I first saw this, I just couldn't figure out how that would be made. But so I think there's been a big shift over the last few years in how you make these paintings. I think it's beautiful that, and because I think this technique started with Sea and Space, and I think it's beautiful that you keep finding new ways to reinvent these paintings to create different textures and gestural movements while staying within the arena of abstract expressionism. And I also think that it takes, as you were talking about this play of action reaction and ooh, didn't want that to happen. Okay, that's fine. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to step into this arena, especially with canvases this large. I mean, I can't imagine how intimidating it is to put down that first first color. So I just wanted to say, I think
that's not the hard part.
that's not the hard part. What's
Bringing it home is the hard part. And so it doesn't always work out. Just so okay, so this show was probably made over 3 times. So if they don't work out, they get cut up and thrown away.
No.
So there's editing. There's a pretty intense editing process. And a lot of times it's fail, 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 fail. And then I find it, and then that's a gold, whatever that's called, streak, a gold streak.
You've said in the past, and maybe we end with this before going to Q&A, the magic of the picture is in the not knowing, in the desperation.
Yeah, the desperation.
But I think that is a beautiful, I mean, again, the courage, this thing you said about, it's about the will. I don't know, yeah, it's pretty insightful to just hear that and know that it really is about the will and pushing through all of the doubt and leaping into these canvases with full faith.
Well, thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your all your effort on this, and There are many questions here, but we didn't address, but maybe it comes in the questions. And this is just exactly what I wanted, was to have a walkthrough of the show.
Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you, Jane, for this conversation. We have a few questions from the audience, and if you haven't had a chance to ask your question yet, there's a form in the chat where you can submit it to me, and I'll try to get to as many questions as I can. The first question is from Kate. Kate says, it's interesting that your paintings have extended to the edges of the surface rather than working into white space. I'm curious if you can elaborate on this.
That happened gradually. When did I start doing that? Let me think for a minute. So the Gagosian show on 24th Street was a central drawing. And then it happened gradually over time. I thought that it was the next most difficult thing to do. So the first exhibition that, let's see, the Mountains, Mud, Prisms, Air at Kordansky, some of the paintings went all the way to the edge. And then the train yards. The train yards at Gagosian. There's a show that was during COVID. You can look at the London Gagosian show during COVID of the black paintings with the white lights. Some of them went to the edge. So it was a gradual move that I thought, I mean, it's difficult, more difficult to traffic in the edge to edge tradition.
Thanks for that answer, Mary, and thank you for that question, Kate. I have a couple questions for you, Mary. I was wondering, I really loved the part of this conversation where you talked about moving beyond the limits of your reach and beginning to work with the platform and other tools. And I wonder how it affected your relationship to the paintings.
It was a relief to walk on them. It made it much easier physically. And there is, as they become larger, I mean, 24 feet is a long walk. So I'm not walking in the painting. I do go out, but it's the size of a room. I have to envision things. And I used to have a very tall ladder and I'd go up and down the ladder to look down on it. But now I don't. Because I've done it so many times. I have more of a feeling for what I want, even without going on a ladder.
I'm interested too I know that when cadmium red became unavailable, you touched on this slightly, that you started mixing it yourself. And
you can't get cad red as paint, but you can buy cadmium red powder, which is even more poisonous, and make your own paint.
And how did that change anything for you to start making it yourself?
It behaves differently. Sometimes if I don't mix it well enough, they're little bits. And so the surfaces can have more crumbles in it, which I do like the surface rubble. I do like that.
Thanks, Mary, for answering my questions. I've got a question from Finbar. Finbar asks, I'm interested in your painting and editing process. Could you speak to why you cut up and discard some paintings because they fail, as opposed to reworking and overpainting where something else emerges?
The paint, that flash paint, I have successfully very gently, very thinly made some gestures on top of paintings to finish them. However, that was in the show about Hawaii, and that was before I began to flood the surface. Those paintings were more like the drawings on an empty gessoed surface. And so there was more white. I'd say it's the same as if you made a watercolor you didn't like and you thought you were going to go back into it. Fail, big fail. Can't do it. Can't do it. I mean, I'm sure you're going to say, yes, I've done it before. But anyway, I suppose you could do it with like very, very thin washes. But what happens is it extinguishes the light. Yeah, there. And then red, I'll just say red's very difficult. I think it's the holy grail because it can easily go bloody. It's hard for it not to look like, especially the way I paint. It's hard to absolutely avoid a surgical procedure. Yep. There you go.
Thanks for that answer, Mary. The last question is from Barry. Barry says, any advice for young abstract painters pushing the limits of contemporary painting?
Let me think about that for a minute. Advice. Get your teeth cleaned. I'm not really joking because, it's just basic. Young artists need to take care of themselves. And if you don't go to the dentist, you're going to get gum disease. So pay the $80 and go get your teeth cleaned. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. Because the physical problems will catch up with you, especially your teeth. And you're just going to spend tons of money on your teeth.
Well, I think that's going to conclude our Q&A portion today, but I want to thank you, Mary and Jane, for this conversation. And as is a real tradition, we're going to conclude today with a reading. And I've asked Mary if she'd like to read anything, and she's going to read something for us.
Okay. I hope the person who asked that question doesn't take offense. It is true. I didn't clean my teeth for 7 years and now I have gum disease and I can't get rid of it. And that was when I just didn't have money as a painter. Happens. And then you have to pay money later. So just go to the dentist. It's about, the big buzzword now is like self-care. It's like, take care of yourself. Don't go overboard without right exercise, food. I won't. I'm too old to say leisure. I didn't have any leisure. I just painted. Honestly. So leisure's older when I'm older. Okay. So after William Blake, I'm just reading the classics, and what I've come to realize is that as time goes by, sometimes people might not know the classics. And so when I think of William Blake was a poet and an artist, and they're very precious few. So he's somebody that wrote poetry and made incredible paintings, though small and maybe lean towards works on paper. And these are 18th century, 1794. And the most famous volumes, this is Dover, and I love Dover because they do a facsimile of the original. So this is William Blake, Songs of Experience, and this is Songs of Innocence. So Songs of Innocence, the most famous is The Lamb. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead. Gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly, bright. Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Little lamb, I'll tell thee. Little lamb, I'll tell thee. And it goes on. Now, Songs of Experience. The Tiger, and it has, it's spelled with a Y, Tyger. And this is a great for painters. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? So I'm going to read that again because the rhyming there is so extraordinary. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? I suppose you could read it symmetry to rhyme it with I, but in what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? The tiger is so good. What the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? And here we go, everybody, rounding third. When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry?
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Mary, for closing us out with that reading, and for choosing those poems today. And thank you so much, Jane and Mary, for your conversation on the occasion of the Surrealist at David Kordansky. If you're passing through Los Angeles or based there, I hope you have a chance to see the show soon. And I would like to thank Alice and Molly at David Kordansky, who were so helpful in preparing for today, and especially Sandy at Mary's Studio, who was so helpful and supportive in preparing for today's program. I'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art, who sponsor the New Social Environment Program and make conversations like this one possible. They also support our growing archive, which is available on YouTube. The Rail has been free and independent for 24 years. A donation directly supports us, our writers, our staff, and our operations. You can support our work at the link in the chat. And if you're free tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, you can join us for a conversation with Morgan Jerkins and Stephen Bell on the occasion of Jerkins's new book, Seal. And as is real tradition, you can now turn on your microphones and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you so, so much for joining us today, and take care, everybody. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mary.
Purnahan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Mary.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Mary.
Congratulations.
Jane.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Congratulations. Go see the show, everybody.
Lifelong.
Bye.
Thank you for drawing me.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.